half hour. This is your half hour call. Half hour call. Hello, and welcome to Half Hour Call, the podcast where we talk about all things live, theater, TV, and film. I am your host, Rich Kless, and today we have something we have not done before the show. Today, we don't just have one guest, not two, but three guests. And while I could easily fill a half hour just listing all three of their accomplishments, I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to briefly describe what they have done together. In 2005, 2006, Hope Hynes Love started at a new position teaching theater at East Chapel Hill High School. She wanted to do a musical in the spring semester that year, so she reached out to choral teacher Desiree Davis-Omburo and to musical direct. Neither of them knew a choreographer, so after a referral from a friend, Hope reached out to Susie Kless, yes, that one, and to be a choreographer. The show they put on in 2006 was Guys and Dolls, and this team has continued to collaborate for the next 19 years, up to and including last month with a wildly successful production of Hadestown Teen Edition. Hope, Desiree, and Susie, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Our pleasure.
You're welcome.
I'm so glad to be here. Yeah.
So, first question for everybody, and I'd like each of you to individually answer this one at a time. So, we'll start with Hope. What made you want to be an entertainer?
I don't think I decided. I think I have a chorus girl story. I was in the kindergarten production of The Foolish Molar as a molar, and my best friend was starring as the Foolish Molar. And the week before we performed, she got stage fright. And I was like, I know all the lines. And they literally let me be, and I did that performance and there was nothing like it.
Mm-hmm.
I think meeting people who did acting as a job in college. I went for journalism, but then happened to be near a college that had an acting program and had professors, had an in-house children's theater, and having professors who did acting as a job, I think was the first place where I was like, oh, people do this for a living, not just for something as an amateur hobby. And you actually could live on this. Right. Yeah. I think that was the first introduction in thinking that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Desiree, how about you?
I don't think of myself as an entertainer, actually. I do think of myself as a performer, and I perform every week. I have a church job where I'm a pianist, but I think of myself as primarily an educator at this stage of my career. And I don't have any problem performing as a pianist or a singer, but I don't think of myself as an actor or a dancer, unlike Susie and but I enjoy performing, and I enjoy performing with others in an ensemble.
Okay. Well, that is entertaining. So,
Yeah.
Susie, how about you?
So I started in dancing school, and the reason I went to Miss Margaret, who I still adore and keep up with, was because my mom picked that school because I didn't have to cross Merrick Road, which was the busiest road, with my bicycle to get to dancing school. And she was a Rockette before she became a teacher. And I always wanted to be a Rockette because I loved her. And at that time, the height requirement was 5'5". And then somewhere around when I was about 11 or 12, they changed it to 5'7". And Miss Margaret said, "You're never going to make it." But I kept dancing. And then after I graduated, my brother believe it or not, was on the train going into the city with his best friend and his best friend's mom, who did all kinds of community theater on Long Island. And she was complaining about not having enough dancers in the show. So he said to her, "Well, call Susie. She's not doing much right now." And that was it. I talked to Elaine Bleiweiss. We got into a temple show, and that was it. I was hooked after that, and she kind of took me under her wing and showed me how to go through the whole process. And
Okay.
that was it.
Hope, I would say you kind of serve sometimes as the de facto leader of this group because not only are you the director, but the executive producer of the shows. What makes this team work for 19 years?
Ooh, I think, um, I actually think that we had a rocky road the first 2 or 3 years we
I can
worked
attest to
together.
that.
I think because Susie and I are both used to being the person who can see the visual space of the show really strongly, and our visions always didn't align. So she would like move. It was almost like building a Lego castle with somebody that you leave the room and then you come back in the room and like they change your stuff. And so she would choreograph something and then I'd be like, oh, that was not what I was thinking in my head at all. And we felt like we were redoing each other's work. And I think somewhere along, and Desiree gets a very ruffled with things that are in flux, right? Desiree, I think, likes to have things planned because also she doesn't like the disruption to people's energy when people feel like their time is being wasted or something isn't right. And so Desiree worries about the now and she worries about like 4 weeks from now. I think
I get it.
Where so right, it's right, like that, and I think Susie and I, where we snapped in, is we recognized how much we were ruffling Desiree, and we both liked her, and we figured out a way to talk to each other, so there wasn't that disruption. And once we figured out a way to communicate with each other, and originally it really was to like we have not. Desiree's a hot mess. Like going between us, we have to stop that. And once we figured out a language to talk to each other so that that didn't happen, um uh we have a double I now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And Susie's great with time, so I get out of her way. I mean, I just think that 3 or 4 years into it, we figured out that our strengths and our weaknesses were things that we needed to caretake for each other and then also get out of each other's way and give each other as much rope in that area as possible.
Okay.
Right? Like
yeah.
when Desiree tells me a kid can't sing a role now, I go, yeah, I guess you're right. Like I don't argue. I used to argue because I wanted this actor to really be in the role. And now I'm just like, Desiree, all things musical, I defer to you.
Okay.
Yes. And I tend to agree with Hope on that, where we both have different visions of the same show, and somehow through the years we've managed to come together with that. But I still can't get over that you wanted to cut the crapshooter ballet from Guys and Dolls our first year together. I thought for sure I would never work with you again.
It's a little lengthy for a high school audience, is all I'm going to say, when you don't have a ballet school.
But they did great.
They did. And you always have more faith. And I didn't know this early working with you, that even if I have a dancer, a lot of times male dancers, even if I have a male dancer who can't walk and chew gum, you are going to have them walk.
Right.
and they'll look good.
Oh,
That
she's
is
married to
where
me.
I've learned to that it doesn't matter the skill level of performer, you're going to make sure that you give them choreography that looks good. And
Right.
I was coming from a school where I had a dance program, and like it was pretty much like if your dancers aren't up to snuff, honey, they got to go.
Right. And my philosophy is I could choreograph something that nobody could execute, and that would be on me. That wouldn't be the kids' fault for that. My job is to make them look good with what they can do and what they can execute. And that is my philosophy.
And it's such an educator's philosophy, which is also fantastic. I've learned that educator's philosophy from you. And, I there was a professional that Desiree and I had as a mutual friend, Joe Lupton. And when I worked with him at Jordan, I was so arrogant and ambitious. And Joe, every kid that ever sang for Joe loved him and loved music because he was like, I'd rather have you sing and you'll sing at the ability you have
Hmm.
and you're going to
Right.
love singing. And I was just like, nah, non-singers got it, go. Right. Like that it was about this cutting mentality rather than here are the raw materials we have.
Right.
Let's make a show. Right. Like Judy Garland, like, I've got a barn, I've got some shoes, let's do a show. And I've
Right.
learned to embrace that and let go of my vanity. And it has made me a better director and a better educator.
Yeah. I think that putting our egos aside as we have grown and aged and come together has taught us all a lot.
Okay. Desiree, let me ask you this because you do something that to me is a miracle. I've worked with a lot of professional theaters and regional theaters, but you're dealing with teenage voices and that are changing their body. Talk about some of the challenges of doing that because you do achieve a high result, I will say, based on what I've seen. What are some of the challenges in that in dealing with that in a changing voice and a changing body?
Right. Well, we part of that comes from the casting. We try to cast the right kid with the right role to facilitate a little bit of that. And then beyond that, I think what's a greater challenge than their actual developing voices is their developing skills because we have a short period of time to teach the show. And if kids don't read music or they don't have a lot of experience singing harmony, then I have to work some magic in that arena. Um, and so as time has gone by, we've had more access to like rehearsal tracks, professionally produced rehearsal tracks, which has helped with that if and when kids listen to them. Um, but I would say just learning to sing the harmony parts, if you're a kid who's never had to do that before, I think it's actually easier to sing the solos, um, in many cases because you can just listen and do it by ear. But with harmony, you have to sing with other people. And so I think with the physiology piece that I'm very fortunate to have a lot of good voice teachers in the community that take care of a lot of that for me.
Okay.
So, but we have had some really amateur leading characters in the past where it was hard. We just crossed our fingers and we did
Okay.
the best we could.
Fine. Susie, so you are the only member of this team who's not employed as a teacher at the school, and you're a guest artist, I guess, contractually each year. Is that a challenge for you not being with the kids during the day, like Desiree and Hope are, or is that actually a good thing? What would you say?
Um, I think if I were there more, I would be able to, it's like sometimes I have to go in at lunch and by the time they eat and then we only have 15 minutes, whereas if I were there, it might be a little bit better, but I don't think it's a detriment in any way. I think I used to teach them a dance class for our first hour of every rehearsal just to get them up to speed. And I don't know when that stopped. I feel like we hadn't had time to do that anymore. I don't know whether our rehearsal period has been shortened, or I'm not sure why, but I do know that that was very helpful for me and the kids. But we don't do that anymore, and I don't know why.
Times change. That's
What?
times just change, I guess. That's
Yeah,
it. So,
yeah.
um, any of you can answer this. Who are some of your who are some of the people who have influenced you in terms of your style of directing or choreographing or anything like that? Or just, it doesn't even have to be a person. It could be a group that you've seen you like want to emulate. Is there anybody out there that you really have tried to do that with?
You go
My
first.
predecessor, uh, Teresa Grawalski, for sure, um, was a fantastic educator who kids really, really, really loved and felt ownership of that program. And I think I I look to that balance of, am I doing these shows as a vehicle for enrichment for the kids rather than a really well funded theater company so I don't have to do all of the work,
Mhm.
right? To run an independent theater company, right? And I think that that's uh, something to always keep in mind. So for me, a lot of my uh, aspirations are to make sure that my theater is an educational one.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question for you, Hope.
Yeah.
Going into that as your first year after Teresa, who the kids loved, how did, yeah, I just say that and take it from there. I think that
I always am at East, always am working against my blue collar attitude about that community. And somewhere over COVID, I think I just had to roll up my sleeves and be like, oh, I am a member of this community. And so I feel a lot easier about change, asking for change and being an agent of change. My study over COVID with Liz Lerman really sort of made me confront those things, but certainly for the first 10 years that I was at East, there was almost this underpinning philosophy of, yeah, and right, like, yeah, you've got a lot of privileges, and I've done really great theater with kids who don't, so shut up and put up.
Mhm.
Right. Like and honestly, in the back of my head, you are some of the only kids I've ever trained that actually could afford to do the 10 years of professional development as young artists and actually make it. Right. So those two calculations of like, you've had voice lessons since you were 5 years old. So actually, if people who decide coming out of this program want to be actors, you also have the financial wherewithal, a lot of you, to make it the 10 years of struggling. Like I actually could build a program of people who, if they wanted to do it, and that's proven true. One kid a year who's graduated of our program is still working in the industry and like really working.
Oh, so you do have several. That was one of my next questions. Was do you have former students that you know of that are out there working professionally now still
Oh yeah.
in your program?
Mesa Kronhaus just started her own business doing social media and helping people do social media, like famous people,
Mhm.
and managing their social media accounts and what they should do and what they shouldn't do and how they get engagement. She's like a consultant as she's building her own acting career. Keaton Markey is a successful producer, assistant producer out in LA. They've been working for 20 years now, which is
Right.
crazy.
I wanted to go back and say who influenced me really briefly because ironically enough, it's the same person that Hope cited. And I thought of it before she even said it. So it wasn't like an afterthought to her. And Teresa, the thing that she would do with me is because I was trained, as most musicians are, to strive for perfection. And she really helped me be more positive, believe it or not. I'm more positive than I used to be. And she would say, all right, I want you to sit there in the audience and come up with 10 positive things to say, nothing negative about a show. And she would give me that exercise to do. And it was an eye-opening experience. So
Well, it's what I was
she,
saying about Susie, an asset-minded director rather than a deficit-minded director. Like I was directed by deficit-minded directors. Like this isn't right yet, this isn't true yet, this isn't memorized, this isn't good enough. Even when I worked professionally, I had one professional director in the area while I was working as an educator go, the difference between an amateur and a professional actor, Hope? Amateurs try to get it right, professionals never make it wrong. I was like, also, the professional actor that you have working didn't teach for 9 hours today.
yeah,
Right. And I think about like that I think that professionally there's a little bit of a deficit minded mentality that is not good for professional actors either.
Right. So my influence, again, Elaine Bleiweiss, who is just my guardian angel for years and years, who then introduced me to Judy Greenhut, who is my mentor and just a fabulous person who I can always go to when I have questions about anything. And Fosse, American Dance Theater, American Dance Machine, that whole thing of trying to be more traditional and educating the kids on where did this come from? Well, let's go back to the 1920s when this step was this and how it has evolved into what it is now. Fosse in particular, the Six Merry Murderesses came from the Kit Kat girls who came from I can't think of it right now, but there's always that thread through all of it. And I think that that really influences me and keeps me in the more traditional choreography.
Okay. Okay. Um, how do you guys choose the shows? How does that happen? What's that process?
Since we've come back from COVID, it used to be sort of a solitary adult process.
Okay.
It used to be like, who do we expect to be next year? What can we get away with? What are we interested in doing? And somewhere in the middle of my tenure, we wrote a mission statement for the after school program that pretty much says over 4 years, we want to have a variety of styles, a variety of genres, so that preparing them for an amateur and professional experience based on skill levels can be connected to the curriculum, all of that, and we still absolutely use that mission statement to guide it so that somebody over a 4-year period doesn't just to see 9 musicals, right? And nine musicals that are all like Rodgers and Hammerstein. And that used to sort of guide us as far as content. We have changed the process, or I have, as I guess as the artistic director, I've changed the process, and Desiree and Susie have a bit of a fight about it. I came back, I studied with Liz Lerman, and started to use her critical response process as a feedback method for me as the artistic director choosing the season. So I send out a form that says intent to participate, that has all sorts of information on it. And I look at the kids who are intending to do stuff as our raw materials. And then I start to look for shows that fit what we have. And then we have almost 8 or 9 conversations where kids give me feedback, where adults give me feedback. I informally go to Desiree and Ryan and sort of do that same process one-on-one. Like, these are the 3 things that were nailed down. Here's why we're thinking about them. And it has led, I think, to stronger choices.
Okay.
And more student-centered, or at least student collaborated, that they know why we've chosen something, or they are on board, or all of their fears have already been expressed.
Okay. And do you allow the students to have a voice in that, or is it just basically on that feedback that you talked about? That's how they get.
Well, that's the thing about this feedback method, is they do have a voice. And so I do things like, what are shows that you think fit our criteria that I haven't looked at yet? That's how we got theory of relativity, right? And I was not sold on Hadestown. And I named my biggest fear. I said, what happens? This is a difficult show. What happens if we take a swing and we miss?
Right.
And one of my kids said, we lose reputation inside of our school, and maybe some musicians won't audition again. We definitely get laughed at and talked about by other schools who are consider themselves competitive with us. And we'll already have people's money because it's going to sell like hotcakes no matter what. So we won't lose money. That's the worst that could happen. And I was like, well, if that's the worst that could happen, let's go. Right. And are you ready to take that big swing? Are you ready to take those consequences? And they're like, yeah, we can live with those consequences too. So the kinds of conversations that didn't happen before, or happened underneath the auditioning process or the rehearsal process, happened before. And so it's almost like we don't have that stuff in the way when we get underway. And I find audition to performance to be a much more efficient process, I think, because of that.
Okay. All right. We're going to stop it there with the creative team from East Chapel Hill High School, and finish off their conversation next week and the same time. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Keep the faith.
Places, places, please. This is Places.